are back. We are back. I made the trek 2 flights up from the kitchen, where I get my coffee just below the roof of the house. I'm in my attic. Tommy D, the nonprofit sector connector, shows philanthropy and focus. I have been out there on the front lines connecting with nonprofits all week. Maybe we'll get into some of those stories. All right, I guess we will right quick before we even get into the show. Just yesterday, I stopped by an organization called Long Island Lending a Helping Hand, which is a thrift shop that is raising money and bringing food and clothing to people in need here on Long Island. When I get to go out, I just continue to meet people in my travels. I got to speak yesterday at the Ronkonkoma Rotary Club. They asked me to speak about nonprofits and philanthropy. And I got to tell you, as I listened before I spoke at the Rotary Club yesterday, shout out to John Emirati from Blessings in a Backpack, along with Blessings in a Backpack, and Blessings of Long Island, which is where this organization helps young people who are food insecure get access to food going into the weekends. So the teachers very quietly pack the children's backpack to go home so nobody knows anybody's business. But they're serving or sending home rather 500 meals with 500 students each weekend. And I think the number I heard yesterday was 65,000 young people on Long Island are food insecure. What are we doing? What are we doing? That's not what the topic of the show is today, but what exactly are we doing, right? What are we doing on this planet? What are we doing in this country? What are we doing on this island? We need to find love and compassion for each other. When I'm at this thing in Ronkonkoma, though, in front of the Rotary Club, they want me to talk about giving back in nonprofits. And I watched these 30 people talk about way before I got in front of the room about how much they're giving back. And I said to them, I said, I almost have nothing to say, but I am Tommy D, so I can still go on for 15 minutes. But I said, I almost have nothing to say because you're talking about there's a meeting tonight that you're going to that you didn't expect. Half of you folks are talking about you worked in the soup kitchen last night on behalf of Rotary, which I will be out there on a Wednesday evening volunteering with the folks. And I don't know, man. That's what makes me keep going is meeting more and more people who are doing the good work and talk about more and more people who are doing good. I say incredible, although I got to strike that word because incredible really means it's not believable. But this stuff is believable. So let's go with fantastic. That's my new word. Fantastic. That's like a thing my mom used to spray when she was cleaning the house. Fantastic. It was like a Windex thing. All right, stop, Tommy D. Bring it back. Jeffrey Abramowitz is here, CEO of the PD Green program. We're going to go into his bio and everything like that, but I'm talking about fantastic people and a fantastic organization. Sir, how are you this morning? What's going on?
I am well. How are you, Tommy? Good to see you.
Good to see you, man. I got to make a quick shout out because I call myself the nonprofit sector connector. But if it was not for Gamal Willis of Avenues for Justice introducing me to Anna Erickson, shout out to my friend Anna. We're only friends for like 2 months, but we meet every other week and we're connecting. And she goes, first time we met, she told me how important social justice was. And maybe the second time we met, she's like, would it be cool with you if I introduce you to Jeffrey Abramowitz? I want you and him to talk about the PD Green program. And I'm like, dude, that's what it's about. It's all about the connections. I might know a lot of people. Depending on the rooms I walk into, people go, oh, Tommy D knows everybody. No, far from it. Yeah, I know about 400 people, right? So that seems like a lot if you go into the same rooms. Like if you go into the same rooms all the time, Jeff, that's what it's like. Oh, everybody knows Tommy D. But when I go into, there's like 8 million people on Long Island. So I'm maybe more than 400 people know who I am, but I don't know that many people. But anyway, point of the matter is, if it's not for friends like Anna Erickson and one ripple back, friends like Gamal Willis over at Avenues for Justice. Shout out to the team at Avenues for Justice. Angel Rodriguez, Lower East Side, forms that organization. When I was told the Lower East Side of New York City was a war zone, and they help young people with alternatives to incarceration. Some of the stuff that's adjacent and or connected to work we're going to talk about today, but if I don't meet Angel Rodriguez if it's not for the New York City Imagine Awards, and he's a finalist in the Imagine Awards. So I could follow these ripples back. And Jeff, I don't meet you if I don't meet Angel and I don't meet Ken Serini 15 years ago from the Imagine Awards. That's how I believe it all goes, man. So I'm sure you can trace back some ripples in your own world. I know you're traveling right now on behalf of one of the organizations that you serve as a board member. So maybe you know more than 400 people. Maybe everybody knows Jeff. I don't know.
You'd be surprised, man. You'd be surprised.
I would be surprised, man. I told you I have your background and which I'll hit into certain points in the show, but really I want to hear your story. I want to hear how you got to where you are right now. I mean, are you a Philly guy originally? I know you were in Philly, were working in Philly.
Uh, Yeah, born and bred, man. Born and bred in Philadelphia. Grew up in Philadelphia and went to the Ohio State University for undergrad, and then went out to Michigan for law school. And always since my I was a kid, I always wanted to be a lawyer. Like I was just I love the courtroom. I couldn't imagine, living life without being in a courtroom and being in front of people. And I did that most of my professional life. I was a lawyer in Philadelphia, a senior partner in a law firm, and love being in the courtroom. Not so much being a lawyer, but love being in the courtroom. And then around 14 years ago, I made some bad choices. So I can't say that I've always been kind of very aware of words and the use of words, but when I say I made choices, I don't believe people make mistakes. I
Mm,
think that we all make choices in life, and those choices don't always work out so well. And Einstein has a great line. He says, if you make 10 bad choices a day, you're just not trying hard enough.
yeah.
Because Einstein believed that you did things, you didn't do them so well, and then that's how you learned. You did them again over and over, and you got better at it. And so I made some choices in life that ended up handing me a federal indictment. And I was standing in a courtroom in March of 2012 for the first time in my life as a defendant in a case. And I was sentenced to 5 years in a federal prison. So yeah, life, man, hits you hard, and all of a sudden I'm sitting back in a holding cell because I was taken from the courtroom, and sitting in a holding cell after I was taken from the courtroom, and I remember I was buck naked, like I had no clothes on, and they're trying to find a jumpsuit for me, and I remember thinking two things. One was figuring out why this happened, so it never happened again. Like I never wanted to experience this again. But the second thing was like, what was the message? Like, what was I supposed to be learning here? And trying to figure out what my next step was going to be. Like, there's something was trying to tell me something, and I needed to figure it out. So yeah, so it was like this crazy kind of feeling where that the next morning I woke up, you don't really sleep the first night in prison, and my cellmate was somebody serving a double life term for murder, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh my gosh, what the heck am I doing here? And I walked out my cell, and there's a line of men there, and they all had their paperwork. They had seen my case on the news the night before, and they thought that the law firm inside the prison was going to open. It was like Christmas in prison because all
They
these
had their
guys.
paperwork. Oh, because the attorney's here now. That's what they
Yeah, they
don't.
had all their legal
Oh,
paperwork. They're like, oh man, we got an attorney here now. We don't have to worry about reaching our lawyer. We got one right in house.
wow.
So I did not become a jailhouse lawyer. It was not something I was looking forward to doing, and so I didn't. But I did help some guys here and there where I could, or guide them the right way. And then the journey began where I just became this sponge. I needed to learn everything. I learned everything from the guys that were around me. Read over 1,000 books. I practiced every religion that was in prison that you possibly could. I learned how to drive a forklift and do all these crazy things that a lawyer probably never gets to experience in his lifetime. So yeah, so we're off to the races, and my second mountain began.
Wow. Second mountain. We'll talk about that. I just, so you said where most lawyers don't get experience. I think most human beings don't get to experience what you're talking about while you were on the inside. I mean, I think, I feel like I want to point this out. I bring up this other show I do called hashtag Ending the Stigma Together. And that show, which I think I mentioned to you, is really about ending the stigma as it relates to serious and persistent mental illness and mental health in general, is the way I like to say it. However, I find that there's so much stigma attached to so many different things that I end up in conversations where it's like, oh, you, Mr. and Mrs. New individual in my life, need to come on ending the stigma as it relates to people living with HIV and AIDS, or you need to come as right. So, or incarceration. So there's so much. I'm projecting the feelings of holy cow, man, you got to be scared like that. You said you're buck naked in a holding cell, and now you're going into prison. And most people have not experienced that, but most people have seen a lot of TV shows and movies and things like that. So fear must be setting in, I guess.
So I thought that too. Yeah, I think it's fear, but I think it's survival. Like you just kick into this mode where you just need to learn how to survive. And that means you're in a new environment, a new culture, someplace you've never been before with people you don't know. And it can be a really harsh environment between the guards and correctional officers and the men that you're with. You just kick into like this survival mode where, okay, I need to do what I got to do. But I fortunately, I was blessed. Because I was a lawyer and had some skill sets, I was able to get ingrained into the system pretty quickly. And that helped a lot, being able to support people with education. I mean, I taught over 60 classes while I was away and did some of the things that really helped the men that I was with that showed that I really cared. But I also listened. I wanted to learn from all of them. I wanted to learn what their challenges were. How could I help them? What was it like for them? Try to understand it better. And that really changed my life because it was my way of understanding that, they say God gave you one mouth and two ears, so you could talk twice as much as you listen. And that's true. For me, I wanted to learn from everybody that was around and found some absolutely remarkable, talented men when I was incarcerated.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. So we're going to get into Petey Green program, maybe some stories about Petey Green himself.
Sure.
Did you go in when you knew, I mean, I guess, did you expect that, like you said, you went from the courtroom to the holding cell. So you and your team, your attorneys, did you expect that you were going in that day? Like
No,
you did? Okay,
no.
so then strategic and plan maybe weren't words that were going to put in there. So you didn't know. You thought you might be coming home.
Oh no, yeah, I did not. First of all, I didn't think I'd get sentenced to time away.
Okay,
I also didn't think that I would be remanded right from the courtroom.
right.
So there were a lot of those surprises that
Yeah,
happened. And I'm gonna be honest with you, Tommy, my perspective on all this was that I was in no position to question anything that happened after the second that I made those bad choices. Because I opened that door up. And I think it's one of the big challenges people have when they do something that's not so right is that, I had to accept responsibility for that. And anything that flowed from the time that I opened the door and made those bad choices, I was in no position to really question. And in a large part, it made it easier for me to accept the reality that, I was going away and that I went to prison and because of just that attitude, like no matter how bad I was treated, how much injustice there was, I noticed it, I was aware of it, but I couldn't complain about it
yeah,
because I made the choice that got the ball rolling. And that was my take on this whole thing. And it made it a lot easier for me to accept psychologically because there was a lot of injustice that happens in our system, and you can really get pretty pissed, to be
yeah.
honest.
Yeah, so okay, so that was gonna because we're gonna do a break in a moment or two here, but that was gonna take me in a different direction. So the surprise means there wasn't a whole lot of strategy, and I love I don't know what the right word, and maybe you could think of it, but that is there some level of maturity or accountability in you saying I made the choice or this bad choice, not a mistake, right? Again, it was a choice, and then the acceptance of everything that happened after that,
It's
so
all about self-responsibility. Like we all need to have self-responsibility. If you do something, you just speak up and just say, I did it, man. Take responsibility for it and just acknowledge it. The good, the bad, the ugly, it doesn't matter. We all have to be responsible for our actions today. And that was probably one of the biggest lessons. Look, I walked down the street today and I engage people that are homeless. I engage people that need support, that are, having addiction issues or homelessness or whatever it is. Like it just opened my eyes to that I'm responsible for it.
yeah,
And that's the way I live my life.
I love all this. This is so great. Jeff, I'm glad you're here. Guys, gals, everybody listening, boys and girls, children of all ages, what I say, ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages. Uh, this is such an important topic. When we come back, where I was going to go with this questioning was counselor, next line of questioning. See, I always wanted to be an attorney, but I never wanted to go to law school. So you can figure out how that happened. So you figure out what happened there. But when we come back, I want to go into this piece about education. You said 60 classes you were teaching and all this stuff. So you didn't go in that mindset, I'm going to go in and be a teacher. You went in like because you were going and that was it, because you did the thing and now you had to go. But I want to hear about when it opened up your eyes that there was this opportunity for education. And that's where we're going to go, because much of that is where PD Green is focused on, PD Green program is focused on. So we're going to get into all that today. Jeff, thanks for being here. Gang, we'll be back in just a moment. This is Philanthropy in Focus.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant, and on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour Awakening Humanity, Thursdays 12 noon on TalkRadio.nyc.
Are you a high-achieving, growth-oriented leader? Are you interested in developing your authentic leadership while creating a healthy, inclusive workplace? Hi, I'm Dr. Mira Brancu, host of The Hard Skills on TalkRadio.nyc at 5 p.m. Eastern on Tuesdays, where we discuss how leaders develop the hard skills needed to make a greater impact. We interview experts, have live coaching, and tackle these challenges. Listen to The Hard Skills on Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern on TalkRadio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC. Uplift, educate, empower.
Nonprofits need connections to move in good directions. So cut through all the static. Join Tommy in his attic.
That is right. Join me in the attic. You know, the nonprofits, they need the connections, right? Look at that. I wrote that song. Brendan Levy and I wrote that song together. Although apparently he has a better singing voice than I do. But if you want, you know, hit me up on Instagram, TommyD.nyc, and say, Tommy, we would like if you sang more on your show. We love to hear your voice, Tommy D. Don't listen to those haters. All right. So with me, Jeffrey Abramowitz, JD, Chief Executive Officer of the Pre-Degree Program and the Puttkamer Center for Educational Justice, past Executive Director of Justice Partnerships and Executive Director of the Reentry Services for JEVS Human Services, and founder and program director of Looking Forward Philadelphia Reentry Program. We talked about you and I kind of talked about it before, the coalition, before the show, Coalition on Adult Basic Education. I want to talk a bit about that. And then some of the stuff, you were appointed as Pennsylvania Reentry Council, and you serve as a chairman for the Employment Committee, a past co-chair of the Reentry Committee of PA Workforce Development, on. And I don't mean to say those things are not important, but I want to hear more from you, like I said before, not from me. But the stuff I want to just hit on is it producer and host of the award-winning weekly radio show, which is called The Looking Forward on Philly Cam Radio. And then also there's another show, right? On the what's the other show, Jeff?
It's called Behind Every Employer with Anson Green from Tyson Foods. And it looks at employment, getting people back to work, and what we all need to know, be thinking of as we get people not only into careers, but sustainable careers.
Yeah. And you know what? Got to shout out my team, Vanguard Benefits, because employees matter. You know, we talk about benefit strategies, talk about attracting and retaining talent, and it just feels like anytime somebody talks about attracting and retaining and sustaining employment and things like that, you know, one of the things I think is so important is to talk about how to get our veterans back to work when they return from military service. And certainly, gang, here he goes. Here comes the soapbox. How do we not support people who are coming out of being incarcerated to get them back on track, give them and empower them and give them the opportunity to get back on track? Because if we don't, what is the outcome, right? What is the outcome? Jeff, I mean, maybe you want to play with that.
No, for sure. So we have roughly 80 to 100 million people in our country that have a criminal background. And the truth is that 95+% are coming home at some point in time when they get incarcerated. So if we don't help people navigate what happens behind the walls and prepare them for their next journey, their next life, then what do we really think is going to happen? They're going to continue to go around and round and round into our justice systems, in and out. So we need to be thinking about how we help people. And that was what motivated me. When I came home, I was homeless. So I came home in 2015. It'll be 10 years in September. And I was living in a homeless shelter. And during that time, my first job was walking by a place and it said Adult Literacy Agency. I was like, what's this? And I walked in and I got a job teaching GED math. and helping people learn GED math in North Philadelphia. And what through this whole journey, even inside, teaching men about math and reading and career opportunities, that is the key. If we can get people smarter, if we can get them to understand, how important math and reading and writing is, but also digital literacy skills, using a computer and financial literacy skills, like all those things come together. So my definition of education is really broad, but it all started when I was away. So Tommy, I was in prison and I taught a CDL class. Now, that doesn't sound too interesting, but I had never been in the cab of a tractor trailer before. So what I found when I was away was that there were guys inside that could drive a tractor trailer unbelievably well. They'd done it all their lives. But the men around them, they could drive as well. They just couldn't pass the darn test. So they didn't read well enough. They didn't know math well enough. So understanding how you bridge those gaps and how you help people inside was where I started. And then that continued as I came home, became a director in an adult literacy agency within a few months being away. And then learning, living in a shelter, I kind of really understood what it was like to be homeless and asking those questions. So if there's one takeaway for your people today, anyone listening, I want you to remember, I always quote it from Ted Lasso, but it was actually Walt Whitman who said, we should be curious and not judgmental. And if we were really curious about men and women that are in our justice system that are coming home, we would ask the questions, what do you need? How can we help you? What does it look like? And part of that is also understanding that they're really, it's really hard for people to tell their story when they come home, but we got to get from them what they need. And it could be, I don't know addition, I don't know multiplication, I don't know how to read or write or use a computer. And if we can help them do that, then we're on our way to solving some of our mass incarceration problem. I just picked this up today. I copied it because I carried around like my Bible. It's a thing called Mass Incarceration, the Whole Pie 2025. So this is a document put out by the Prison Policy Initiative every year, and it gives you all the data on prison. And every year I look forward to reading it because I look at the numbers going down and down. And honestly, in 2025, the whole pie is the first time in years that now our prison population is going back up. During COVID, we saw this great release of people from our prisons and jails back into society. And now we're just going back into the same thing again. Like, what do we need to do to learn from these lessons that, we have to do a better job educating and helping people navigate what happens when they come home. And that means getting not just a job, but getting a career. And I want to be really intentional about that. People come home and we task them to get a job and we throw them into these jobs like, fast food restaurants and, work in maintenance wherever. But if people don't do what they love to do, how long do you think they're going to do it for? And we have to get people thinking about the mindset of finding a career so they can feed their families and be sustainable. Look, I could talk all week on this topic, but the truth is we all have to be educated. We all have to understand that, the system has these flaws in it, like probation and parole and putting people on these long taglines. I call it the Meek Mill syndrome. Meek Mill was the guy who came home and he was taking his kids to school every day from Philadelphia into New Jersey, into Cherry Hill, New Jersey, right across the bridge. 150, 200 yards away. And every time he took his kids into school, he's taking his kids to school and he's getting violated because he's leaving the state. Like, we got to understand that some of these things just don't make good sense.
Yeah, that's like, what are we thinking there? And that is that bureaucracy? Is it just we're not asking the right questions? I mean, that example of Meek Mill's there, it's like, that's ridiculous. Like, that sounds like a ridiculous situation. Like, how he's violating his parole because he drove his kids, what do you say, 150? He went from Pennsylvania to New Jersey to get the kids to school. Like, there needs to be some, I don't know what the word, dispensation. There needs to be something going, like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, why is that a legislative issue in your mind?
It's just common sense.
That's right, but it's
sense.
Yeah, but it's not. That's not so common, they say, right? Common sense, right? I've heard that.
It's true, but there's a lot of things in politics that aren't common sense. So we're not going to drive there. But
Yeah.
but the truth is that, this really isn't about politics. When we talk, the work that I do is really centered on education, workforce development, and criminal justice. And there isn't, I was in Washington at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce this week, and there isn't a person on either side of the aisle that disagrees with the fact that we want people smarter in this country and we want them into careers. Like those are two big premises. No matter who you are, what you look like, what your color your skin is, no,
Mhm.
doesn't matter. We want people smarter in our country. We want them back to work, and part of that is just understanding how you go about doing it.
Okay. Well, that's what I want to get into from a technical perspective in a moment here. But smarter and careers, you say both sides of the aisle are in agreement on this, that's great news. That makes me positive. I didn't expect that you were going to say that everybody was on the same side of this. Sometimes sometimes even though the nonprofit sector connector can get a little negative, gang. But smarter and careers. I want to go back to something before we get further into that piece there around choice. And you talk about bad choices and things. I believe as a society, if we're not helping people get smarter and not helping them get on a career journey, and you mentioned fast food or you mentioned maintenance and things like that. If you can't provide for your family, you might make some bad choices again. And if you're in an environment where bad choices are abound and everywhere, and you can make these, and again, I didn't grow up in these types of communities, but I know for sure I've made some bad choices in my life just because people that have been around me and my own choice, right? My own self-responsibility for making the choice. However, when it's about like taking care of your family and you just can't make it happen on Burger King salary or, lower salaries, sometimes it's like a have to do. It's like the kid who stole a loaf of bread or the man who stole a loaf of bread so he could feed his family, like stuff, like crazy stuff. What, Jeff? I mean, I don't know. I get crazy about this because some of this seems so obvious, you know?
It's really obvious, but again, we don't ask the right questions and we don't take responsibility for fixing it. There was a woman who, when I was at Community Learning Center Beyond Literacy, a teacher came to me and said, "Mr. A, can you talk to so and so? She's missing class. It happens every month. She's missing class." And I brought her in and sat down, and talked to her. I said, like, "What's going on?" She said, "Oh, Mr. A, I'm close, man. I got one more math section to go, and I'm going to get my high school diploma." I said, "No, like I get all that, but what's going on? How you doing?" And it took me a while for me to get from her the reality that she wasn't coming to class because she couldn't afford feminine products.
Mhm.
So period poverty is a real thing in a lot of communities in our country. And I just never saw it. Like I wasn't educated to it. I didn't understand. I called my daughter. I said, "Rachel, talk to me about period poverty. How do we fix it? What do we need to do?" And those are the questions we have to ask. Those are the questions. And I was blessed at the time with a stroke of a pen. I made sure we had feminine products in all our facilities. But the truth is, had I not asked those questions, like how long is that lady going to be coming to class?
Yeah.
She's just so I think it's things like that where we need to dig deeper and then we need to find the solutions to them and just do it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's that's a topic that the period poverty situation that I learned about a bunch of years ago and it didn't catch for me until I have a friend named Heather Edwards who runs an organization out here on Long Island called Allied Foundation. And Allied Foundation was founded by the Allied Physicians Group, which is a bunch of pediatric practices here on Long Island. And what would happen is these doctors were realizing these babies were coming in with rashes and they didn't understand what was going on. So they asked the right questions. And the parents in the communities were saying, "I have to leave the child in a soiled diaper because my benefits don't cover, right? My government benefits don't cover diapers and wipes and things like that." So they formed the Allied Foundation and they've given away, I think, Heather, I'm sorry if I'm wrong, but something like 5 million diapers or something insane like that. She and I were texting the other day and she's got a delivery of 95,000 diapers. What does it have to do with period products? Well, let me tell you, the point was the next iteration of that was they realized that same communities of people who couldn't afford diapers, the women couldn't afford these types of products as well, et cetera, et cetera. So now they have, and I was just again texting with Heather. Shout out to my buddy Fred Taffer outside of Philly, who runs Tombow Visual Creations, does a lot of promotional items. He's done some stuff for me, some hoodies, some hats, all that stuff. But Fred is doing some bags for Heather, and in those bags are these drawstring bags that they fill with feminine products for young girls and women. and then they hand them out to certain other community-based organizations. Ripple effect, ripple effect, ripple effect. But to your point, if you don't ask the questions, if the docs at Allied Physicians Group don't ask the questions, what's going on with the rash? If you don't lean in and ask the question to this young woman, you you then change the trajectory of not only her situation and her life, but how many other hundreds and thousands of young women that you put the products in. I mean, this is what it is, Jeff. This is the stuff, man. I mean, I do a show called Long Island Changemakers because I want to acknowledge and just amplify the stories for people who are doing this type of work. So I'm glad you're here. This is so important. All these topics are important. I wrote down, be curious. What do you need? Gang, that sounds like compassion to me. That sounds like love, man. What do you need? How can we support you? Second ever episode of this show, Dr. Larry Grubler, my very good friend, who's the CEO of Transitional Services for New York, TSINY, gang, look it up if you don't know. Why does he drop all these names? I'm not telling you I know Johnny Depp. I'm not telling you I know any celebrities. The people that I know run important organizations. TSINY serves 5,000 individuals with serious and persistent mental illness in the 5 boroughs of New York City. That's the organizations you need to look up. The organization we're talking about today is a PD Green program. But these are the people I hang out with, people who are changing the world. Jeff, thank you so much. Thank you for your team, for all you're doing. Show's not over, gang. We're only halfway home, baby, but we're getting into some serious stuff. When we come back, I want to talk PD Green. I want to talk about the organization. I want to talk about how you went from, you're in the shelter, you're walking down the street, you get this job in education, right? And then now you're the CEO of this organization here, PD Green. Maybe talk a little bit about his life and who he was. This is Philanthropy and Focus. I'm out of breath. We got to take a break. We'll be right back. Hey, everybody, it's Tommy D, the nonprofit sector connector, coming at you from my attic. Each week here on TalkRadio.nyc, I host the program Philanthropy and Focus. Nonprofits impact us each and every day, and it's my focus to help them amplify their message and tell their story. Listen each week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time until 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on TalkRadio.nyc.
Hi, I'm Linda Marsanico. The A Train to Sedona is a memoir about my journey to love and compassion. It's also the name of my new broadcast on Wednesdays at 12 noon. When we are spiritual, we embrace possibilities and ideas, which strengthen our mind, body, spirit, health, and wisdom. On the A Train to Sedona broadcast, I plan to interview guests who embrace these expansive practices. Join us on Wednesdays at 12 noon on Talk Radio New York City.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Nonprofits need connections to move in good directions. So cut through all the static. Join Tommy in his attic.
Here's what I can tell you, gang. Be vulnerable, be open. I just realized I ranted and raved about Dr. Larry Grubler, and I don't even think I made the point. Second ever episode of the show, he came on, he said, Tommy D, we all need support at different times. We all need support at different times. So I gave you the TSINY commercial. I didn't give you the punchline, but maybe I'll just hold him back. Maybe I was just going to get it out. I just shared the website. Go to the website, pdgreen.org, and I'm going to spell it for you, PETEYGREENE.org. pdgreen.org. Jeff, let's talk about the organization. How did you even get there? What happened there?
So crazy. So I came home. So I was homeless. I started teaching GED math, became a director at an adult literacy agency, and then moved my way up, started doing reentry programming, and then eventually found my way to an executive director of a really large workforce agency, and oversaw their criminal justice programming. And then from there, I was offered this position as CEO of the PD Green program. The PD Green program has been around 15 years. It was founded by the class of 58 at Princeton University. And PD Green was a disc jockey in Washington, D.C. He was in a movie, did a movie about him called Talk to Me. And it tells his story where he was incarcerated, he came home, and his manager and himself sit down and said, I want to be on the radio, and it's my dream of mine, and got a radio show in Washington and had a huge following. And the men in the men and women at Princeton University fell in love with his story and said, you know what, we got to make education the center of this. So the PD Green program is the largest multi-state provider of individual educational services in the world. What we do is really simple. We help people get smarter. And we do that using college students and volunteers from around the country. And we actually have them learn how to become tutors. And they work with people to help get them smarter in math, reading. So in the justice world, there are three words that people often have a real challenge saying. I don't know. Those are the things. And by providing one-on-one tutoring, you're breaking down that wall where they're able to say, you know what, I don't know my math. I don't know times table. I don't know how to read too well. I don't know how to write too well. All these things. I don't know how to use a computer. And by breaking that down with one-on-one tutoring, we're able to meet people where they are and then give them the support they need so that we can help them get smarter and transition. The PD Green program has been around for 16 years. We have served over 20,000 students. We have thousands and thousands of volunteers in the country. We work in 130 programming sites, and it's an amazing program. So there's two reasons I took my job, Tommy. One was because I'm helping people get smarter, but two is because I'm using college students from around the country, and we're changing culture. We're bringing them inside of prisons and jails so they can experience what it's like, so they can understand the humanity of the people that are incarcerated, and on the outside to help people when they come home. And it's just a win all the way around. So it's a remarkable organization. We are scaling really, really fast. And I just absolutely love my job. I love what I do every day because, again, it's impactful. If you have someone that's incarcerated and they take one class inside a prison or jail, just one class, they have a 40% better chance of not going back. And that is one of the big problems we have in our country. 2/3 of the men and women that come home are going to find their way back inside of a prison within 3 years.
I want to stop you for a second.
Yeah.
I want to get these stats down. So
Sure.
what is there if somebody takes one class while they're incarcerated? Give me that again.
Yeah, somebody takes one class inside while they're incarcerated, they're 43% less likely to return to prison.
43% less likely by taking one class.
In one
However,
class.
if they don't take a class, give me the recidivism rate there.
Yeah, we're 66.8%. About 2/3 of those people that are in our prisons and jails are going to return within 3 years.
So it's what you're doing and other programs similar are empowering people to make better choices, and they're able to make better choices because I'm listening right now, not right this moment, but I'm listening to Atomic Habits right now on Audible. Shout out to Audible. They're not a sponsor of the show, but they are a sponsor of me for sure. I love Audible. A great book, and it's all about being a different person and identifying as someone different, right? That's not what it's all about, but that's what I'm taking from it early on in the book. And it reminds me of like be, do, have. Who do I have to be to experience these things? If I am an individual who doesn't have access and is not educated, right, and cannot read or is challenged with literacy, I feel inclined. Shout out to book fairies here on Long Island. Talk about millions. They've given away 5 million books to people. There's a whole nother thing. We should talk about that later, Jeff, when we're not live. Tommy D, we're not networking now. We're doing a show. So, so we're empowering these individuals to be able to make better choices because they're not, I'd argue, the same individual because they're educated now. You're creating smarter people, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's that, it's that chain of events that you keep talking about. It's that chain. If somebody cared enough, and I have story after story about people that we helped get their high school diploma. We help them. We have a remarkable program called College Readiness, College Bridge. So gets people ready for college. People have never imagined in their lifetime going to college or having the opportunity. And now, you know what? There's a program that we have that gets people ready. So when they go to college, they have a chance of succeeding and really, really being prepared. So many of these things they're this trickle effect. I'll give you this data point, which I think is fascinating, that the number one predictor of a child's educational attainment in their lifetime. So if you have a kid, the number one marker for their education in their lifetime is the education of their parent. Now think about that. So if you can get mom or dad smarter, then what's going to happen is their kids are going to get smarter. They see mom and dad with a high school diploma, going to college, being successful, having a career. Like, and college may not be for everybody, but there are some really successful people coming home that are getting certifications in plumbing and
Sure.
HVAC and electrical and all these other things. So I think we just have to be real that a lot of that, it takes education. It takes a basic ability to read, to write, to use a computer. And the more we can hook into that, the more we're going to see people transitioning not into just a job, but into a true career.
Yeah. Yeah. And shout out to the trades gang. I mean, there's so much opportunity. College, I will stand here right now. I'm raising 4 children. Maybe all 4 go to college. I don't know yet. We're not there yet. But I'm not somebody who says we got to go to college. There's so much to do. Plumbers, electricians, uh, bricklayers, so many careers you can get into. And if you have an entrepreneurial spirit, you parlay that trade into being a business owner and an entrepreneur. There's so much there. However, your point earlier, you need the basics. You're going to need your reading. You're going to need your math, and some of it elevated math, depending on which direction you're going. But and again, people talk about AI and the whole digital thing and stuff like that. I don't know when AI robots are going to go out and run cable lines and like underground or work in sewers and stuff like that. I don't think we're there yet. And those are admirable jobs to go out and provide for your family. And I feel like in this country, there's so much about everybody needs to go to college. And I think I believe you're not saying that, but everybody's got to go to college, and that's a whole nother game, because then now we're under the thumb and we owe all this money back and and what do you think on that?
Yeah, most of the people that I work with are not going to college for a lot of reasons. Look, we opened up the Pell Grant initiative for people that were incarcerated a few years ago, and it was under the first Trump administration. He reinstated Pell Grants. But the truth is, very few people were successful in completing that because, number one, many people weren't ready for college and they weren't prepared for what was going to happen next. And then when they come home, life takes over. The big thing coming home from prison and jail is, making sure your family is fed. You got a roof over your head, that you can, you got a job, that you can navigate all these challenges. And there are over 44,000 documented challenges for people coming home from prison. Think about that, 44,000, just starting with an identification. Look, we tell people, first thing you get home, get a job, got to work, right? And what do you need in order to work in this country?
I need an address, right?
You need
an email
ID,
address.
right?
Yeah.
You need an ID and you need a social security card.
Yes.
And those are 2 things that are often the hardest for people to get when they come home. So, again, we just don't wear those glasses that we need to be wearing to understand that when everyone leaves a prison or jail, the very first thing that we should be giving them before they walk out the door is an identification. Give them a state ID.
Yeah.
We know who they are, right? They're incarcerated. We know who they are. Let's give them a state ID so that they can get a job when they get home, and they don't have to worry about getting identification.
So what about that? What does that look like to get that actually implemented, a program like that? Are you guys involved with, I know you said you were in DC, different things like that recently. So talk about that if you could.
Yeah, we're in a bunch of different states. And you know what? It's taking responsibility again. I was at a job fair last year, and PennDOT, Pennsylvania Department of Transportation, was there. And I said, look, can you issue identifications right on the spot for people coming home with this job fair? It's the largest job fair in Pennsylvania. It's at Temple University. And they said, yeah, we can do that. And then I got there and I noticed that, you know what? People didn't have money to pay for it. They couldn't afford the 50 or 60 bucks. They weren't forking it out. Right. I handed the guy my credit card. I said, look, run it up to $2,000. Anyone wants an ID, give him an ID right here, put up to $2,000 on my car. And he did. And they ran through it all. They got everybody as many IDs. We need to own it. We need to find ways and solutions. And we're doing a better job at it, but we're still not there yet. And we just these things have to be on our radar screen so, we can understand, not to make any assumptions. We need to be curious again. When somebody gets a job, we shouldn't assume they can get to work the first day. They may not have bus transportation. They may not be able to get to work. We shouldn't assume they got work boots or they got clothes to fit for work. We have to ask those questions, or that they have the skills to even log in at work. My first paycheck when I came home, I was making $7 an hour teaching GED math in North Philadelphia, one of the most challenging areas of our country. And I got my first paycheck. I walk into my boss. I said, I need where's my paycheck? I'm all excited. My first paycheck, it wasn't a lot of money, $7 an hour. How much is it going to be? And she said, what do you mean? She said, everything is direct deposit. And a direct deposit, I had a financial crime. I didn't even have a bank account. I had no idea what to do. So we have to be curious. We have to ask those questions, and that will help us get there.
That goes to HR, in my opinion, and education around HR. And first of all, I believe, like we're talking about, we need to be more open-minded and curious about hiring people who have a record, and I feel like, a number of years ago, 15, 20 years ago, there was this thing where you have to say, have you been convicted of a felony? And I don't see that so much in job applications that I see for clients and candidates and different things like that. So that has changed, I guess. But then there's another ripple to that where it's like, okay, but what do we need to take in mind? And to your point, be curious about onboarding somebody properly, because they don't have context of some of these things. I mean, there's things that people come out after, 20-year sentence or something like that. And the world is a different world, man. The world is like, I don't want to say left them behind, but if somebody's gone away for longer than that, I saw something on, it was just like a quick thing on a newscast one time. This was a long time ago. And these two men had just gotten out of prison, and they didn't have any concept of cell phones. And then they also, they were about to walk across the street with a reporter, and they were both very concerned. This is somewhere in New York City, I believe. And it was like, they were concerned about getting in trouble for jaywalking. And like, it was just like a silly thing that kind of always stuck with me. But like, I don't know if jaywalking is actually a thing anymore, but like in their era, like, and again, they were probably so indoctrinated into having to follow rules and stuff like that all the time. But what do you think about just that? Like, not even having context of what there is. And then we got to go to a quick break after that.
Yeah, there are people that have never seen cell phones inside, never used a computer before, and they come home, and what's the first thing we're tasking them to do is go online and file an application. It's like, you need to download your resume. How do I download? What's that? What's a mouse look like? I have no idea. Yeah, really basic things like that. We just shouldn't assume, because, the truth is, and many people, they struggle with those issues coming home, and we need to be really mindful. HR is a whole different thing. We can probably talk about it after the break. What employers really need to know when they hire somebody that's got a criminal background, and what it is. But I want to, before we take the break, I want people that are out there thinking about this. Imagine the most embarrassing thing you've ever done in your life. And then imagine sitting in front of someone and having to tell that person that embarrassing thing and then ask them for a job. So it's really hard to do.
Stick with that. Take that one for the next 90 seconds, gang. Sit with that. Okay. Go in your memory banks, most embarrassing thing, and then have to put that out there. And while you're asking them to give you a gig. We'll be right back. Philanthropy in Focus.
Were you an essential worker during the pandemic? If you needed to learn stages of epilepsy, did you depend on advocates? Did you use new innovations to cope with mental and neurological issues? Maintaining high quality of life and keeping good mental health are what we all strive for. I'm Frank R. Harrison, host of Frank About Health, and each week top healthcare influencers, professionals, and innovators answer these questions and more. Stay tuned on Thursdays at 5 p.m. on TalkRadio.nyc, and I will continue to be frank about health with all of you.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant, and on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, Thursdays 12 noon on TalkRadio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Nonprofits need connections to move in good directions. So cut through all the static. Join Tommy in his attic.
All right, we are back. And for those of you who listened to the show before, or those of you who met me in real life, you probably know what I always wanted to be when I grew up, which hasn't happened yet, either of them, what I wanted to be or growing up. but I always wanted to be a game show host. So this is sort of like the lightning round. This is like when we run out of time on the game show and they go beep 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 beep. Like Pat Sajak and on the Wheel of Fortune, things like that. So we got a couple things still covered before we go, and we got a short time to do it. So Jeff, real quick, let's hit on that thing about HR because I think that's really important for companies to be aware of. And what's the name of your show again that people should plug into it from an employer?
Yeah, it's called Behind Every Employer, and they can reach it at coabe.org, COABE.org. That's the Coalition on Adult Basic Education, and that's the conference that I'm at now. So Behind Every Employer, you want to check that out, or just Google Behind Every Employer and my name, it'll come up. But yeah, HR is really important. We have to be aware that people have things on their background, and that HR shouldn't be using that background check just to eliminate people from opportunities. We should be looking at the skills they bring to the table and not their past. And if somebody's qualified and there's a huge labor pool out there, about a third of our country has a criminal history. So being mindful of that and really giving people an opportunity and just not using a criminal background check is really important. Human resources are now they're realizing that a lot better now. And they're starting to open the door up wider to people that are coming home and letting them. And I do believe in transparency. I believe if you have something on your record, you should disclose it. That you should tell your employer about it. You want to be upfront, no matter how embarrassing or bad it might be. Yeah, I think that's the best way to go.
Yeah, that's great. And we should do a whole nother show just about best practices from HR, but it sounds like you can learn a lot from your other program anyway. Let's get into kind of like what's upcoming for this organization. I wrote down scaling really fast. I read something in your strategic report, strategic plan, which is really great, which is right on the website. And I was looking through that this morning, and there was something about national expansion. I mean, I know.
Oh my gosh. So we're moving really fast. That's great. And it's one of the things that, we're realizing, because we're a nonprofit and because we're helping people get smarter, our goal is to actually help the metrics of teachers and instructors around the country that are doing this work, because we provide one-on-one tutoring and support. So we are scaling, we're growing across the country. We're excited about that expansion. We're currently, we're going to be in many, many more states over the coming months. And what that looks like is both inside our prisons and jails and on the outside, working with people and also being creative about it. We just launched the Puckhammer Center for Educational Justice and Equity, which is a national think and action tank and a fellowship program for people that are justice impacted, as well as a program evaluator to prove the work that you're doing. A person without data is just another person with an opinion. So being able to really show the great work that we're doing and looking at it, and also going into things like human workforce development. And know that part of our job is not just to educate people, but help them educate to become good employees and productive in the workforce. So we're working hard in the workforce development field. And then we're also looking at people that can make change happen. And that includes people that are longer term residents of our carceral setting, people that have been down 10, 15, 20 years or serving a life term. And now we're starting to use those people that have an education inside our prisons and jails to be tutors. We're teaching them to be tutors so they can, when there's a lockdown or something going on in a prison or jail, their learning will still go on, because we got our tutors right inside, and they're our credible messengers. They're the ones that are telling the young folks that are coming in, man, you don't want to be like me. You don't want to be like an OG like me in the system. You want to get out there and do right and get smart and find a career. So lots going on.
Lots going on. And I did share it. So if you go to the website, pdgreen.org, and I will spell it out for everybody, PETEYGREENE.org. Scroll down to that first page, gang. On the bottom of that first page, you could see the executive summary that I'm looking at, the Puckhammer Center on page 6 and 7, and just really a great, I want to read this later on, that your strategic plan from 2024 to 2028. I'm excited to know you and know the organization and really be aware of the growth. And I want to ask you, fundraisers, events, things that people need to know about. Jeff, what's going on there?
Yeah, you definitely want to get on our website. Our big, we have a 5K coming up in April, the second week of April. That's in Washington. It's going to be in Washington, D.C., in Princeton, New Jersey, Philadelphia, and Boston, all in the same day. So if you're interested in any of those areas, or get on virtually and check us out. You want to get on the website, though. Our big event this year is later on in September this year. We're going to be recognizing the Brandon Chaskowski. He was a chef at Edwin's. He just got the James Beard Award. And he's got a programming restaurant called Edwin's in Cleveland, and amazing. But every person that works in the restaurant is just as impacted.
Wow.
And they're doing some amazing work. It's a 5-star restaurant. He's doing some great stuff, training people as they come home. But get online. We also have a justice education series. These are all, we call them free 95. They don't cost anything at all, and you can just get smarter and learn more about the organization. Always, we're open to donations. We are a nonprofit organization, and we're always looking to increase our funding. But get on the website and check us out. There's a lot on there, and a lot of it's free. And if you want to become a tutor, man, if you're in one of the jurisdictions we're at, definitely you want to check us out. Give us a call. Hit me up with an email, and we'd love to see if we can find a place for you to become a tutor and get involved.
I want to ask you one more quick one before we go, and I'm
Sure.
sharing. Once you get on the website, gang, you go to the puck camera. It's one of the tabs you can check out right up at the top. So let me ask you this question: give me a quick story, if we could, about a young person who became a tutor, and how their life was impacted just by this experience. Real quick, if you could, an anecdote.
Oh man, there's so many. I want to tell you a student first, because there was the state of Pennsylvania, their adult literacy program has a Student of the Year award, and last year one of our students who got tutored inside got the award. And she was a grandma, and she was up and she was receiving the award, and she was grateful, talking about her story of how she was incarcerated and started with her GED, and then now is in college going to her master's degree. But the thing that was most impactful, standing right next to her, was her six-year-old granddaughter, and that her granddaughter just had this smile, like grandma had just, she just won the Super Bowl and she was getting this award. That's the impact of education, is that it's multi-generational. Yeah. It can make change happen, and that's why we do what we do.
I love that. I'm glad you chose that story. What's the ripple effect with that young girl, seeing grandma changing her life around, right? You talked about the statistics. The number one predictor of somebody's success academically and education-wise is the education level of their parents. You are making me consider everything I'm doing in my own life, raising my 4 children, my wife. This is the stuff we must continue to iterate on in our minds, gang. We're one big family. Listen, here he goes. I don't care about where people live on this entire planet. We're one race of human beings, and we need to support each other to the best of our ability and give people what they need. And what I learned most, and I learned a bunch from you today, Jeff, what I learned most is to be curious. What do you need? Reach out, gang. What do you need? I talk about mental health. It's okay to not be okay, right? Check in on people. Give love, give compassion, give hugs. Jeff, I can't wait to run into you in real life and give you a hug, because what you did for me and the people listening is incredibly impactful. Thank you for being here. Shout out to my friend Anna Erickson over at Seville's, because if it wasn't for you, Anna, I don't meet Jeff. So that's just how the world goes. And I know, knowing Jeff, that I'm going to meet a whole bunch of more people changing the world and making it a better place. So thank you all for being here. I will be waiting here until you all come back and see me next Friday. So I'll be right here in the attic. So just meet me here. Make it a great day. I'll see you later. Thanks.
Nonprofits need connections to move in good directions. So cut through all the static. Join Tommy in his attic.